I once heard this story. A local minister working in a community that was pretty poor by most people's standards had gathered the children of the congregation at the front of the church, and he was talking to them. It was Father's Day, and the minister thought this was a good opportunity to talk about fathers. But as he talked about how great it was to have a father and all the things that dads can teach us, he realized that the children in front of him were quietly crying. They were staring at the floor, and he remembered all of a sudden where he was. This is a church in a community that had very few to no fathers. The single parents of his congregation were single mothers. There were hardly any dads. And he stopped his talk. He asked the children to turn around and look at the congregation. And then he asked every man in the congregation to stand up. And he pointed to them. He pointed to them one by one, and he said to the children, "You see him there? That's your father. And you see Jeff at the back? He's your father too. And there's Dave. You all know Dave. He's your father. And he's your father, and so is he, and so is he." Do you know, there wasn't a dry eye in the place? Not because it was so sad, but because there was joy in being fathered, of having a father. Now, the source of that joy, that truth that caused so many to weep for joy, is that God discloses himself as a father. And that makes me wonder what you think when you think of yourself and God. Many of us are kind of stuck on the bearded man in the sky picture. God is like some fluffy Santa Claus figure who knows when you're naughty and knows when you're nice, and he's watching to see whether you're good or not. Maybe your mind goes in the opposite direction, to God as some ethereal spirit or being floating above all the noise and the nonsense of the world, living in bright and blissful heaven, a distant father. But God discloses himself as a father in a very different way. In Proverbs, he is a good father who teaches and guides, who gives all the good things we heard about last week. We can really know him. We heard of this relationship in our readings this morning. Proverbs starts with this picture of father and son, mothers and daughters, and it returns to that often. It says, "Listen, my son, to your father's instruction. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. They are a garland to grace your head and a chain to adorn your neck." It goes on and on like this. God is Father, and that means we are his children. And so God is never an afterthought in the book of Proverbs. He's at the center of it all. He is not just God in the Proverbs, he's the God of the Proverbs. And that's why we hear this motto again and again. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, real knowing, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. That is Proverbs urging us to make God central in all that we do. We read in chapter 3, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." That central imagery of father and son, it's more than a metaphor. It's a lesson in itself. God doesn't just hand out the Proverbs. He teaches us through them. Now, I can't speak to your relationship with your fathers. Maybe it's been good. Maybe it's been bad. For some, it may have been non-existent. For some, the word father will conjure joy. For others, it's pain and heartache. Some might actually speak the same way of their mothers. But it's important to know God as Father, the perfect parent. He is better than the best and the worst fathers and mothers. There's no comparison. God has no equal in this regard. And a few aspects of this picture are worth considering. The first thing to say is about the home. Families tend to live in homes. And the home is important. It's not just where the heart is. It's where much of our learning should take place. The home is a key institution of learning. And I don't just say that in the midst of COVID-induced homeschooling. It's always been the place that shapes and molds us. And God knows this. And in his school, in his family, the home matters. It's here in the language of Proverbs, fathers and mothers teaching sons and daughters, but it's been around from the beginning of God's people. Here's Deuteronomy 6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give to you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. We hear it as well in the New Testament. Timothy was the beneficiary of a Christian home. It shaped and commissioned him for God's work. Paul writes to him, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives also in you. But as for you, continue in what you have learned and have become convinced of, because you know those from whom you've learned it, and how from infancy you have known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make you wise for salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. Do you know, we in the West have largely given this up. We have given our children's education to the state. We've outsourced it to others. And we've done the same in the church with our children's spiritual education. We've taken the home largely out of the equation, and instead we employ youth workers and youth programs to do what God has ordained the family to do. One of the encouragements I've had from all of this lockdown is that families have had time together to live and to learn together, to talk together, not just about the schoolwork, but about life work, how we're feeling, how we're coping, what we really think is going on, how we deal with it. All of that has been forced back into the home. Now, some are in a rush to get them back to school, and there are good reasons for that. But if we've missed the opportunities and these lessons of lockdown to be parents and children together again, then we've just wasted our time and we've neglected our duty. And please don't just think of families here with kids and teenagers. Think of yourself. If God is Father, then you are child. And how much of our lockdown have we spent with him, listening and learning? Like I said in one of the weekly emails, there are plenty of people in the world who have said they have no time to read their Bibles, and they've just learned that being busy was not the reason. Let's keep thinking and rethinking the home and the family as we seek to learn and live and learn together like fathers and sons, mothers and daughters. God models this for us. God provides this for us. And with him, we don't just have a perfect father, but it all happens in a perfect home, the perfect school of his wisdom. So the home matters. Duty also matters. As we look deeper into these words about parents and children, teachers and learners, we can also appreciate the duty to God that they contain. Take Proverbs 3, for example. We heard part of this earlier. It says, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commandments in your heart, for they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on a tablet of your heart. Then you'll win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord, shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing. Your vats will brim with new wine. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. Do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father the Son he delights in. Do you know, in those 12 verses is everything we need to know about this book of Proverbs and God's fatherly attention. We learn that God is the start of everything, including our relationship with him. His love is proactive, ours is reactive. And the love and faithfulness here in these words only makes sense in that relationship with God and his church. Trust comes out of those things. We have a trust for our teachers, and with God, no things are no different. In fact, trust is deepened because we are in awe of who God is. I think it's worth listening to those words again and ask yourself if they are really true for you. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. You see, if those words are true for us, then stewardship is the way of our lives. We're given everything, so due care and attention are the norm, not the exception. It's not like being loaned something valuable that you take extra care over. Everything is given. We're to care for all that we have, especially the people God has given us. And all of this living, this wise living, it's a discipline but never a chore. To steward something means to tend to it as God would tend to us. We're to tend to our relationship with him, not out of fear, not out of lifeless duty, here we go again, but out of love and gratitude. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline. Do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves. As a father, the son he delights in. Now, I know what you might say. Easier said than done. Easier read than done. That's fair. But only one son ever truly fulfilled those words. You see, Jesus did not despise his Father's discipline. He did not resent the rebuke that was meant for us. God disciplined his Son, Jesus, out of love for him and for us, because we are his delight. Or as Isaiah put it, long before the cross ever happened, it was the Lord's will to crush him and cause him to suffer. And though the Lord makes his life an offering for sin, he will see his offspring and prolong his days. And the will of the Lord will prosper in his hand. After he has suffered, he will see the light of life and be satisfied. By his knowledge, my righteous servant will justify many and will bear their iniquities. I think that sounds awfully familiar if we sit with Proverbs 3 open in front of us. But what a reminder that we come into this family, into this fatherly love and wisdom through the perfect Son. You know, wherever we turn in our Bibles, we're to find Jesus at the center as Son, but also the one who introduces us to the Father. Do you know, the problem with this perfect picture is us. It's our rebellion. We might think of our adolescent years as rebellious ones. You may currently have a rebellious teenager. But rebellion is simply the natural way of our hearts. It's what we're really talking about when we talk about sin. Now, the answer to that comes down to trust. It's all about faith. And in the world of the book of Proverbs, which, by the way, is the real world we live in, here's the way to think about faith. Do we allow the Bible to overrule our thinking? It says here that we're not to lean on our own understanding, but we so often do. It's natural. But if you just agree with the Bible, then your obedience to it will only ever be a coincidence. But if we allow God to teach us, to overrule our thinking, then we'll be forced to change. We will give up our most cherished thoughts and feelings. Now, you know what? That's not a recipe for a quiet life. That will involve risk. But it will produce the sparkling life of wisdom. Listen carefully again. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. You may know that the most popular song played at funerals is Frank Sinatra, My Way. And there's nothing wrong with that. People can have what they want. But these words of our Father in Proverbs tell us there's something deeply wrong with that song. It preaches the opposite of what the Bible teaches. Think of the words, and now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear. I'll state my case, of which I am certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway, and more, much more than this, I did it my way. Do you know that is actually the voice of the know-it-all, who always does things his own way? People love this song, but it's stupid. It's foolish. Go back to the motto of this book, this whole endeavor of living, of trying to live wisely, and you'll hear it. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. You see, the Christian is to say, God, your way. The fool says, my way. To a world that wants to do it their way, this is radical stuff. Because at its heart, real fatherhood is a radical act. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. This Father's Day, let's rethink what our Father is really like. Don't imagine, read, trust, and obey. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Well, let's pray about these things. Father God, our ways always seem right to us. So teach us again that your way is best. Remind us that we don't always know what is right. And so instead drive us to the perfect wisdom of Jesus. He is the Son you delight in, and through him you delight in us. May we feel that delight and embrace your teaching and your discipline, for we ask in his great name. Amen.